Hey y'all, it's me, Kevvie. Welcome to the new year. I know I'm super behind on all of those end of the year videos, but trust me, they're coming. But they're coming on my time. If I let myself get too worked up creating content on a deadline, then BookTube would stop being fun for me. And BookTube is supposed to be fun. So please be patient as I upload in a way that works for me. I have been so busy this month. Most of my editing time has been spent on a series for a client. Two of my drag friends, Ryan Stone and Cavanagh, hosted a weekly review show discussing the latest season of the Boulet Brothers Dragula. It's like Drag Race, but with alternative drag and Fear Factor style challenges. So every week I've been editing that series, and then for the finale they asked me to come on as their special guest. I'll have a link to that in the cards and in the description below. I also got into drag for the episode, and my roommate Serby painted me. Just look how gorgeous it turned out. So yeah, you definitely need to go watch it, even if you aren't familiar with the show we're reviewing, at least to see how good I look. And they look good too, of course. Please go send some love their way, thank you. Despite how busy I was, I read 18 books in December. Holy crap. First off, a lot of these books were for the Christie's Missing Readathon, which I still need to record my wrap-up for. Yes, I know it's been over for a few weeks already, but don't worry, it's still coming. I'll save all of those books for that video. The most important thing I read this month was the zine Fucking Trans Women by Mira Bellwether. Mira was a beautiful, intelligent, empathetic transgender woman who passed away in December after a year-long battle with lung cancer. To honor her memory, I wanted to read her zine right away so I could share it with all of you, and hopefully then some of you will read her and remember her as well. Also, I'm not sure how familiar y'all would be with the term zine, but it's basically a grassroots amateur magazine, made independently. I'll have the link to purchase the zine down below. I know it is technically possible to find a free version online, but please, especially if you're cis, pay the $10 for it. She may be dead, but she still has funeral and medical expenses. And trans women deserve to have our hard work respected and paid for. I know we're all struggling and pinching pennies, but a trans woman has died. A woman who has shaped an entire generation of trans women and taught them the beauty of their bodies and their sexuality. Please help out her grieving family and preserve her memory. So if it wasn't made abundantly clear by the zine's title, Fucking Trans Woman is a beginner's guide to having sex with trans women. It's a deep dive into how trans women's bodies are different from a cis woman or a cis man's, and the unique ways that these bodies can be celebrated and pleasured. Even if you don't have any intention on sleeping with a trans woman anytime soon, this work is instrumental in breaking down transgender stereotypes and learning to better understand the trans experience. See, trans women have always been thought of sexual beings, the most common stereotype of trans women being that we're all sex workers. But see, we're only perceived as sexual objects, existing only for the pleasure of others. This zine says fuck that garbage. We deserve to have partners who understand how to make us feel good without having to give a trans 101 lesson every time we bring someone to the bedroom. Fucking Trans Women is groundbreaking, and you really must read it. When I started reading Fucking Trans Women, I was not in a good place emotionally. I had a rough few weeks, but those feelings aren't necessarily the content I want to create for YouTube. But anyway, those issues were exacerbating my depression, and then this zine was just reflecting all of those issues right back at me and making me feel exposed and vulnerable in a way that I really struggled with. I cried 4 times in the first 6 pages. This was a really hard read for me. Fortunately, after having an emotional epiphany, I started feeling a lot better, and I was able to read the rest of the zine with minimal tears. But again, to clarify for my mostly cisgender audience, your reading experience of this would be completely different from mine. Fucking Trans Women isn't sad, it's an educational tool, so y'all don't need to worry about being in the right headspace because it doesn't affect you as directly. I also wanted to bring up that this zine is listed as issue 0, and was originally meant to be the beginning of a recurring publication. This first issue, issue 0, was all about Mira's personal experiences with sex and sexuality, but beginning with issue 1, it was going to be full of submissions from all sorts of trans women, showing how diverse and unique our desires can be. Unfortunately, there never was an issue 1, so this zine is also kind of like a time capsule, and shows us the potential of what could have been if trans women and trans creators were given more support. I'd like to hope that with her passing, perhaps her partner or her family could take these submissions that she's received over the years and finally make fucking trans women issue 1 a reality. I read 2 books of poetry in December, the first being Gumbo Ya Ya by Aurielle Marie. If you saw my birthday book haul video, you'll remember that this author went viral when Lizzo sent them one of her dresses to wear at an awards show. This collection is about their experiences as a queer black person from the South, and it is phenomenal. I've pulled 2 of my favorite poems from this collection to read to you. Unholy Ghazal. I have my convictions. No one watches over sparrows. In my mother's house, there is somehow a God who listened to me blaspheme. I tell the truth about my own magics and anger my mother's iniquitous God. I sharpen prayer into knives and kneel only for pleasure now that I know better. My mother says I will fall ill or get caught up in revolution and realize the sovereignty of her disastrous God. But 13 died in a chapel searching for his glory. And elsewhere, a 13-year-old was killed during bedtime prayer, her hands pressed to her chest, eyes looking up, and I assume she was calling upon some just God. I sat in a paddy wagon after that, sure of my death. My hands tied to my feet tied to the floor. I am sure in that moment my mother prayed. But instead I sang. Yes, the songs were my faultless God. I crooned at the top of my lungs until my voice broke. Instead of beating me, the police, they laughed. They forced quarters into my mouth, requested their favorite songs, their notorious God of Abraham. Fear was greater than you. My own 2 wrists that I broke to slip the cuffs. 2 were bigger than God's by their own circumference. My mother's God fit in my pocket, my pouch God. Waited until the coast was cleared to show his face. The first sounds he chewed into a word, sorry. And I am too. You God of ruin, God of dead children and of the police. And oh, of my mother too. A heinous God. Listen, I've released the fish back into the ocean. In his mouth, 1 hook and my earliest memory. I named the fish after my father, and did not kill him. See me in all my forgiving glory. The fish gill slit and sly, slip-skinned and slutty. My father, wearing a different beast's hide. I snuck an oyster blade into its eye, and that was all. I am not exempt from attempts at blind rage. I am indeed my father's daughter, a fisherman's muse, a flounder's second chance at swim. If there was a storm, I would have taken it as a sign, but the natural order isn't equipped for revenge. No, the sky was bursting with the possibility of rain, and the fish had my father's eyes. So away he went, half blind and still unable to speak my name across the bar. I caught him tangled up between the holes of a net, or a woman who was not my mother. I shouldn't abandon the metaphor for your sake. But my father was a promiscuous man, and I don't know if any fish has left his young to starve or fall victim to the vacuum of a whale's mouth. Besides, here is a trout, or a perch, or a snapper maybe. His fin flecked toward my blade. So-called scales illuminate in the sun. And fuck if I am not trying to be a different breed of man. I am trying to improve upon my paternal line. I am empathetic enough to the aquatic, more than I am given credit for, and I have not done unto a scaled belly what has been done unto mine. I hate a thing without gutting it. I can love a father and never lie about what I do with my knife when he leaves. Aurielle Marie is an incredible wordsmith. with a unique voice, and I would definitely recommend this poetry collection. Then I read Why Dust Shall Never Settle Upon This Soul by Ryka Aoki. Aoki's novel Light from Uncommon Stars was one of my favorite trans books this year, so I was eager to see what her poetry was like. It's beautiful and super queer. Here are a few untitled excerpts. Never expected to wake to school boards banning Harper Lee. Evolution as a fad. 6 sisters refusing their meds. Never expected to have to revisit the mucus, the wasting, the blindness, the heart-lung gurgles of struggling through one last hopeless night, the guilty final wish that she would just die. Who would have thought survival might rest upon how long one holds her melody, her sobriety, her breath? We must remember these transgenders who simply wanted to be themselves. She was cosmic headscarves, tap dance fingertips, and origami eyes. She was satin camisoles, bedsheet corsets, flowers, cards, the hospice lobby for those too courageous to walk inside. There was nothing simple about her. Or her. Or her. Or her. Or her. Bless those who disowned their sons, yet say they listen to the same punk rock as they always have. Bless those whose children fled in a nighttime Greyhound bus, yet still bake cookies with raisins instead of chocolate chips. May God help those proper Presbyterians who kicked out their daughters, whose NPR membership leads to nights discussing the oppressed people of the day and how it's maddening, but not realistic, to demand justice for another generation or 3. Light a candle, loop a ribbon, for in a world without runaways, cast-offs, and queers, who shall redeem the rope, the razors, the cans of gasoline? My father brags I've never worked a day he couldn't work harder. He's never seen me work a drunken muse, his dead rat cock, 3 fingers up his ass, gagging on his stinky couplets, moaning when he hits me, and hits me, and hits me. Oh yeah, this is a great collection, and I'm so glad to have read it. In December, we finished reading Nightmares and Dreamscapes with Jake the Bookish Drummer's short story book club. My review of these stories is recorded. I just haven't had the opportunity to edit it yet, but it'll be out soon, I promise. If you'd like to join us for the next short story collection, Everything's Eventual, I'll have the link to the Discord server in the description below. Since I finally finished the Steve Cavanagh books I got for my birthday last year, I was finally ready to read book 6 in the Eddie Flynn series, The Devil's Advocate. This book really changes things up for the series, for the first time being set outside of New York City, instead being in the rural South. The district attorney in Buxton, Alabama, is a serial killer, but not in the traditional sense. He has never directly taken a life. Instead, he sets up innocent people to get sent to the electric chair, and he loves doing it. He's currently prosecuting a case against a young black man on trial for murdering a white woman he worked with. He's obviously innocent, yet the DA has the whole town and jury convinced of his guilt. Can Eddie Flynn come in and save this boy's life and put a stop to this evil district attorney? As always, this book was incredible. I heard from other readers that this book was their least favorite in the series. Now that I've read it, I can see why. They're bigots. The Devil's Advocate gets way more political than the previous cases. True to form, we get plenty of chapters from the perspective of the killer, known to us only as the pastor. The pastor is the head of a white supremacist organization, murdering in conjunction with his DA buddy to enact a wicked scheme to prove that communists and people of color are a detriment to society. Eddie Flynn, of course being a reasonable man, sees that this is wrong and needs to be stopped. The people who didn't like this book didn't like it because they don't like to get political, which in itself is a political decision that always favors the people in power. So whether they like it or not, their choice to remain apolitical puts them on the side of bigots. Not up for debate, so don't try it. I really loved that Cavanagh was willing to get down and dirty with the corruption in America's justice system, and how it interconnects with so many social causes. I applaud him for doing so in the face of his more conservative readers. He also isn't afraid to kill off his major recurring characters, so when one of them is in danger, it really is terrifying. This book was so good and had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. The Devil's Advocate just further cements that Steve Cavanagh is one of my favorite authors. I just got the latest release in the series, The Accomplice, for my birthday this year, and I cannot wait to read it. Switching things up, I decided to listen to The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I signed up for a modern retelling of And Then There Were None. I had to DNF it at 17% because it was annoyingly hetero. No hate on y'all, but I couldn't be less interested in how often straight couples fuck, or how long it's been since they fucked, or how many different people they're trying to fuck. Or do you think they're fucking and do you think he knows that they're fucking? Or can they fuck real quick without getting caught? Y'all can do whatever you want in the bedroom, but keep it away from my queer ass. By chapter 9, there had not been a single hint of mystery, but every stupid fucking chapter was just about sex and all these different characters fucking and not fucking and da-da-da. I'm over it. Done. It may be a great mystery novel, but I'll never fucking know. For a while, I've been wanting to read 3 Bags Full. I forget which channel I heard about it on. It might have been Katya. It certainly sounds like her kind of book. Weird translated fiction. 3 Bags Full is a German mystery novel set in Ireland, told from the perspective of a flock of sheep trying to solve the murder of their shepherd. Normally, I don't care for mysteries where the detective is an animal of some sort. I struggle to suspend my disbelief to that extreme. Like, sure, in a fantasy world it could be plausible, but in an otherwise realistic environment, that just isn't going to happen. I still wanted to try 3 Bags Full, though, because I liked the idea of the entire flock working together to solve this case. This was a really fun mystery, with the sheep being surprisingly distinct and well developed. It was so funny whenever they would witness or overhear something, recognize it as significant, while also lacking an understanding of human social interaction, so they totally misunderstand it. Like they think one of the villagers in town is named God because they keep hearing people talk about him. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and maybe I'll be more open to the subgenre in the future. I read The Christmas Murder Game through NetGalley, so I'll save my thoughts on that for the next NetGalley video. Last December, the Discworld read-along that I was a part of read the Discworld's Christmas novel, Hogfather. However, since I'd only read one Discworld book up to that point, I didn't feel versed enough in the series to dive into it. But now that I've read the starting books in each of the sub-series, as well as several others, I was ready to finally experience the Hogfather. Fuck, this book is brilliant. Santa is dead, and Death is tasked with taking over Santa's duties. Meanwhile, Death's granddaughter, Susan, tries to figure out what happened to Santa, and hopefully bring him back. Y'all know how much I love to identify the theme in a Discworld novel, and the theme in Hogfather is belief. It's apparent right from the beginning. Susan is working as a governess, and the children in her care ask her if the Hogfather, Discworld's version of Santa, is real. And she tells them that if they don't believe in him, they don't get presents. The way belief was handled in this story is fascinating, but I won't share too much else about it because it was so integral to the plot it would be a spoiler. There's also quite a few side stories going on, like the wizards at the Unseen University uncovering a hidden bathroom. And it wasn't until we were over halfway through that all these disjointed stories suddenly fit together. The plot makes perfect sense within the greater Discworld lore, and I really loved the way it was all woven together. Also, upon watching the Hogfather TV series, I realized that the beginning of the book did lay things out pretty clearly. I had just failed to connect several pieces. But that's on me as a reader. But yeah, like always, loved this installment of the Discworld. I should do a ranking video of all the ones I've read so far. Oh, that would be so fun. Let me know if you want to see that. The last story I read this year is actually one that I wrote. I've published my second story starring Wilhelmina and Patrick called Death of the Author. This time, solving the murder of beloved children's author turned Queen of Turf's J.K. Rowling. I was just so inspired by Gretchen Felker Martin and how she chose not just to kill off J.K. Rowling in Manhunt, but she said, fuck it, in every book I ever write from now on, this bitch is dead. That just sounded like so much fun to me, so I decided to write my own story about her death, seeing what would happen if a trans woman was in charge of finding this bitch's murderer. Most of my stories are written with comedic elements, but this one is just straight up silly, taking the piss out of TERFs left and right while also conveying the message that their beliefs are dangerous to transgender people. But because it is so silly, I'm pretty sure this one isn't going to be canon to the full series. If you'd like to read Death of an Author, I will have it linked in the description below, and at some point I'll get around to recording it like I did for Chicago Beauty, so watch out for that. Also, like Chicago Beauty, this cover was designed by Devin Tarkavian. Thank you so much for bringing my stories to life. So there you have most of what I read in December. Are you going to pick up a copy of Fucking Trans Women? Or are you interested in any of these other books? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if it pleases and sparkles, I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!